Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of We Built This White Lake. My name is Stephanie Ware, Executive Director with the White Lake Area Chamber and Visitors Bureau, and I am so excited to have with us today CJ Van Wieren, the Superintendent of Whitehall District Schools. Welcome, CJ.
Thanks, Stephanie. Appreciate it. Glad to be here this morning.
Good. So glad to have you here and in our community and with Whitehall. We're just going to go ahead and jump right in. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about Whitehall District Schools as a whole and what it is that you do, your role.
Yeah, so my name's CJ Van Wieren. Obviously, Stephanie just said that, but I am the superintendent of schools in my first year of that. Just transitioned into this role actually this year. I've been here for 12 years. I started as a fifth grade teacher over at Ely Elementary and taught for 3 years, and then transitioned into the middle school principal role for 7 years. And then last year was the assistant superintendent and also the athletic director. So I've seen a variety of roles in the district, which has been great. I've got to work in multiple buildings and work with some of the people that are still there today. And so it's been awesome to have those relationships with those people and transition into this role of superintendent, knowing that it's a big role and just super excited about it, the opportunity to lead this great district and try and take us to greater places. So
that's awesome. I knew you'd been with the district. I didn't know you started in the elementary. So you really have seen all of the ages and grades for the district.
Yeah, I mean, so our elementary structure is a little different than others in that we have the K2 building. So that would be an area that I didn't work in the past, but I didn't teach in the high school at all. I did spend 11 years as the assistant football coach and 3 years as a JV baseball coach. So I've worked with a lot of the high schoolers too. And so, yeah, I mean, it's great to have that diversity. And, like I say, I've met a lot of the people prior to being in this role now. And so just have started to develop relationships and makes for a great place to work.
Good. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, go ahead and tell us a little bit about where it all started with Whitehall District Schools, where it all began, kind of that history.
So I had to do some research, and luckily there's a YouTube video out there by a Lee Dickinson. It was done maybe 10 years ago or so, maybe longer, but it is the most recent kind of video that I found, and she does an amazing job of outlining the history of Whitehall District Schools. And so if you get a chance, I encourage you to check it up. You can just type in history of Whitehall District Schools, and it comes up. But, Whitehall District Schools started back in the late 1800s. From what I understand, the 1860s was the first school here in the town, and it was down by the water here, over by like where Goodrich Park would be. It was a log cabin that was used for a little schoolhouse. So that's the 1860s. It started to evolve from there as school became more popular. 1878 is when they built the first kind of schoolhouse that would be one of our current buildings, and that's over by the bus garage now. So the school building itself is gone, but the bus garage was an addition to that schoolhouse, which was the gymnasium and locker room and things like that. And that's currently where we do all the maintenance on our buses is in that same building. So that's pretty cool to see. Whitehall started as just kind of a small city school, and back then it was probably a village. But as time went on, we added students from the Twin Lake area, students from Fruitland Township that had their separate schools back then, but it all kind of consolidated into one through the early 1900s, and so from there. 1949 was when Ely Elementary was built, and that kind of started the process of the current buildings. 1954, 55-ish, I believe, is when the current middle school was built, and then 1960 was the CSB, which is our community service building now, which at the time was built to be the high school. And then was the high school all the way up until 2004 when the new high school was built out on White Lake Drive there. Okay. And then Shoreline Elementary was built in 1994. So Ely is our oldest, outside of the bus garage, but our oldest building, 1949, was and that was, I forget how many kids they said were in the district at that time. But that was when it had gotten large enough that they needed that bigger space in order to house all the students that were going to school.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I learned some other things too. I'm just looking at my notes, but, we have photos in the CSB and also in the high school of graduating classes. And the earliest one that I found is 1907, and that's actually in the CSB building there. And what happened, from what I understand, is some local community people, Sandra Gibbs and Paul Kleinfelter, back in 2014, kind of did this project of pulling these photos of all the graduating classes. And I think Paul used his studio to kind of refurbish these photos and then frame them. And now we have them hanging up, and we continue this tradition today. Every graduating class goes up on the wall. And it's, just super cool to walk through these spaces and see each graduating class hanging up there. I see a lot of people in the CSB, especially, that are walking those hallways that are kind of reminiscing, and I do it too sometimes. I look at it and just people that I know or teachers that we have working for us, and seeing their senior picture up there on the wall. A huge thanks to those guys for taking that project on and getting it going. So, yeah.
So I've seen that wall.
Yep.
And it's so fascinating, especially when you watch the class sizes. They were so small to now. I did not realize, though, that project was as recent as 2014, which still seems very recent to me.
Right. Yeah.
So that's incredible.
It is. And to be able to go back and find some of those photos, and like I say, from my understanding, is Paul did all the work on editing them, lightening them, whatever it may be, to make sure that, those are pretty old pictures. So to get those hung up on the wall and in a frame is pretty awesome.
Gosh, I'm always amazed and incredibly grateful for the people who, at that time, 100 years ago, 90 years ago, said, this might be important later, I'm going to hold it. Or, whatever their thought process was. And then all of these years later, we can use that as really cool history.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It has been a blast to learn about the history. And yes, I've been here for 12 years. I've heard some of it, but to really just dig into where it all began, and how it's grown and developed over the years has been a lot of fun to learn.
Good. I'll have to look up that video, because I think our area history is fascinating. I think there's so much to learn. I remember we have at the chamber these booklets from City of Whitehall. I believe it was their centennial. They had this 100th anniversary program, I guess you could say. But in it, there are some, if I remember correctly, I don't know if it was the first, but it was a very old photo of Whitehall District Schools football team.
Yeah.
And again, very different uniforms, very different size teams. But there's a lot of just history that's been preserved about it. It's awesome.
Yeah. And I know, you look back at like the Battle of the Bell rivalry, and CatchMark did a piece a few years ago on the history of that, dating back to the early 1900s. And there's a lot of history around here that, as someone that didn't grow up here, it's fun to learn, and it's fun to see how things have changed and how many things are still the same. And just it's a lot of fun to learn.
Same. I do think there's something to be said if you're not from here. I'm also not, but I've been here for about 14, 15 years. And the history is just that much more fascinating to me, because I love the community from a different perspective, because I'm not from here. And so learning all of that, it's like brand new information every day.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Fun.
Yeah, exactly.
So what would you say some of the biggest hurdles have been throughout the history of Whitehall District Schools?
Yeah, I think the biggest hurdle would probably just be the ever-changing atmosphere that public schools is. And while, the concept, public schools are the greatest thing, in my opinion, and I'm biased to it, obviously. It's one of the best offerings that we have, is for kids to be able to get a free education. And so you look at the changes and how it's evolved over the years. Hurdle, yes, because there's different legislature that comes out. There's different standards that come out, and so it's difficult at times to keep up with those things. But I would say that the overall goal has always been the same, and that's to provide an education for our kids and prepare them for what's to come in the real world, essentially. And so, it's you can get into some of the other things too with hurdles and funding sources, and where that comes from. How do we sustain ourselves? How do we continue to be competitive in the world of compensating people? So I mean, there's probably a lot of different hurdles out there that are more present time, but when you think of the long history, it's just how it continues to change and grow and evolve, which is both a hurdle and exciting, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I don't know that I've ever quite thought about it that way. In terms of public education, I've known it's free, but in terms of stepping back and going, how incredible that really is that this is a free education that everybody here has access to, which is incredible.
Yes.
So with the hurdles, we always hope there's way more victories.
Yeah.
What would you say are some of the district's biggest victories over the years?
I mean, you start talking about a district that's been around for over 130, 40 years. I'd say that's a big victory.
Yeah, huge.
I think that we have an amazing staff. And we see our victories in the fact that when we have job postings and things out there, we have people that want to come to Whitehall. That's credit to, one, the school district as a whole. People want to work here, but also credit to the community. People want to live here. People want to hang out here, which is awesome. And that's in a time right now where, teacher shortages are happening in places. Whitehall District Schools isn't experiencing that at the moment. And so hopefully we can continue to have that climate and culture that people want to be a part of. So on top of that, I think our victories happen every day with our kids. And you see the accomplishments that they make. You see the amount of kids that are going to four-year universities. You see the amount of kids that are taking advantage of the Muskegon Promise. You see the amount of kids that are going right into the workforce and being successful. And there's so much great things that are happening with our kids when they graduate and leave here that, that's a celebration all the time. Get into some of our band, our choir. Those programs continue to grow. Our robotics program, absolutely amazing. K-12 now robotics with Legos and robots. And I mean, just what a great opportunity for kids. We're developing an esports program too, and trying to work through some of that. You get into our athletic programs have been successful across the board, and so providing those opportunities for kids to get involved in extracurricular activities is essential. We know that kids that are involved in things like that are more successful in the classroom, and that's why we continue to look for ways to provide those opportunities for kids. So I would say, that's a victory in itself.
That's incredible. You just listed thousands of victories in a matter of moments. When you think in terms of all of the students who have graduated, whether they went into a trade or to a university or just all of that.
Yeah,
so that's incredible.
And so much with school, maybe in the past it has been like, you have to go to college. What are you going to do after high school? What college are you going to after high school? There's so many different opportunities, and all we want is for our students to leave and be 100% community ready. It doesn't matter what path you choose at that point, but you are ready to contribute to our community in a positive way. And we know that there are many needs in a community like this in all job areas. And so when you leave high school, what's your plan? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And how are you going to contribute?
That's amazing. That's a good goal, and I think that's probably pretty freeing for a lot of
Yeah,
students too.
for sure.
Honestly.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
that's great.
That pressure of going to college. I mean, it's not cheap to go to college,
No.
and so uh, we want you to have a plan, but it doesn't have to be to go to that 4 year college
Yeah.
and spend a bunch of money.
That's incredible. So, you've kind of hit on it a little bit, but overall, how would you say Whitehall District Schools has impacted the community?
Yeah. So we have just over 2,000 kids in our school district. So when you think of our school district as a whole, Fruitland Township, White Lake Township, Dalton Township, Village of Lakewood Club, Blue Lake Township, Whitehall City, there's 2,000 kids that come to the center of this community every day to go to school and learn. And that in itself is a giant impact on this community and this city alone, because our schools are in the heart of the city of Whitehall. There's 400 plus staff members that are employed between Whitehall District Schools and White Lake Community Ed. And so there's another 400 people that either live here or they come here to work, which again makes an impact on a community when you start talking about local businesses and the support and things like that. So, outside of that, I would say that any strong community has a strong school district, and they go hand in hand. When you have a strong school district, people want to move here, people want to live here, they want to send their kids there. But you also have to have a strong community that supports that. And our community has shown that through the years that they continue to support Whitehall District Schools. And so we just need to keep that support going. We need to build upon some of the successes that we've had in the past. And I'm not going to sit and say, Stephanie, that there's nothing wrong with Whitehall schools, right? There's things we can improve on every day, and we're looking at those. We're taking a new look at it. A transition in leadership has allowed us to do that. I'm trying to get as much feedback from people as possible, because I want to hear from our people what they see and what they notice and what they believe and what they want, because we're in this together. It's our schools. And so I'm really just trying to focus on how can we improve, and it doesn't happen overnight. You can't snap your fingers and make changes, but it can, as you get that feedback and start to look at your processes and things like that, you start to make some changes and hope for improvement in the future.
That's incredible. And living in the community, I see that support a lot.
Yeah.
Whether it's a sports team going to state and the whole community just seems to rally and get excited, or whether it is the big Battle of the Bell, and watching, especially the houses that live around the football field, get very excited about it. And so you guys do have a lot of community support, and that's awesome to see.
For sure. Absolutely.
That speaks volumes on the district too.
Yeah.
So. What is a parting message of yours?
Ooh.
Do you want people to know about either your position within the schools or the district?
Yeah, I would say the district as a whole. We are committed to doing whatever we can to create the best educational experience for students. There's no teacher that goes into this field that doesn't care about kids, deeply care about kids, and want the best for them. While, I know that it's not always perfect, they truly want what is best for kids and want to see them be successful. And we have such an amazing staff here. And like I said earlier, I've gotten to know many of them over the years. We have some new faces in here too that I'm getting to know. But they are 100% dedicated to making sure that when kids leave Whitehall District Schools, they're successful in whatever it is they do next. So, we've got some things that are coming up, and I wouldn't want to miss we have an operating millage, which is we want people to vote, and an operating millage. I think it's essential to know that this is about 13% of our yearly funding. And it's essential to make sure that we continue to be able to provide for these kids. And it's not a new tax. It's something that's been around. We haven't voted on it in 10 years, and we sometimes forget about what these are. It doesn't include a turf field or anything like that. This is just operational cost, and so that'll be in May. And like I say, we hope that everyone gets out and votes because everyone's voice matters. And so, as we move forward, and what I'm looking forward to is just the opportunity. And it's such a great place. We live in the community now. We have for the last 5 years or so, but such a great opportunity to lead the school district and find ways to make a better experience for our kids. And so, I've got 3 kids of my own that are in the school district, and so I'm just looking to give everyone the best experience possible.
Good. That's amazing. Well,
Yeah.
CJ, I thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
It's fun to not only hear more about the history of the schools, but also get to know you more as you're newer to your position. And you can just see that you're very passionate about what you do and about the students that you guys get to serve and about your staff.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Stephanie. I appreciate it.
And thank you, everyone, for watching. We will see you next time.